My name is Bryce Gore. Technically, it's Richard Bryce Gore, but I go by my middle name, Bryce. And my role at Bradley is I'm an instructor and advisor within the interactive media department, specifically the game art program. Yeah, so it was actually kind of a crazy journey. When I was fresh out of high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to be, so I went to a community college, and I really focused on getting a associate's degree in computer networking, so like just networking computers together. And then my last semester there, I decided I wanted to go to Michigan Tech University to study computer hardware engineering. And my last semester at community college, I ended up taking a Photoshop class and Illustrator class, so 2D digital creation classes. I did take a 2D game art or game creation class as well. And that stuff piqued my interest because I've always been interested in art and computers. So it's kind of nice to see those two worlds blend together. 2 years into going to Michigan Tech for computer engineering, one of my friends, he told me, he's like, "Hey, Eastern Michigan has this program called Simulation, Animation, and Gaming." And he said, "I know you love computers. I know you love art. So come check it out and you might actually like it." So I've been in school 5 years at this point, but I ended up doing a hard switch into simulation, animation, and gaming at Eastern Michigan University. Um, so that's kind of how I got into this career path. And while I was there, we did some gaming stuff, but it was focusing more on like creating 3D assets for like the production pipeline, I guess, commercials, visual, non-real-time visualization. So that's how I got started in this field. And I've basically my first semester there, I just fell in love with this stuff. So. So I was teaching at another university, and my job there was perfect. I really liked it. But I was just teaching and doing advising stuff. So Ethan Ham, the department chair for interactive media, actually reached out to me, which was pretty brave of him to do that. But he again, he saw my portfolio, my teaching experience, and so he thought he'd contact me. And I'm really glad he did, because what he proposed was an opportunity not just to teach, not just to advise students, but to create the game art program. So this is really a good opportunity for me. I'm really having a lot of fun doing it. I'm working with awesome people. Um, After that first interview, I knew, I was like, oh, this is going to be a really good group of people to work with. I think what we're doing here at Bradley is really focusing on the students, which is awesome. We're trying to give them the best resources we can, the best advice we can. So that's something I felt that Bradley was doing better than my current employment when Ethan reached out to me. And so those are kind of the things that really got me excited to teach at Bradley, and ultimately what led me to switch. And I don't regret it one bit. Yeah, I wasn't. I know game design's been around for the longest, I think, and then things have kind of branched off from there. But my coworkers that I'm working with, except for Ethan, he's been here. Ethan, Scott, and Brent have been here for a while. But I know they're relatively new. Like, I thought they've been here for a while, but they were like, "Oh, I was here like 1 or 2 years before you got here." So I wasn't involved in the creation of like those programs. Um, I'm more so involved in the game art program, which actually just launched last semester. So it's really new. And right now, like, another reason why I do like working at Bradley too is like just the growth of the department as a whole. Like, we've just introduced a master's program in game design and development. And so that's really promising. But yeah. Yeah. So I'm probably not the best person to talk about the master's program. That's head up by David Abzug. He's been in the industry a long time, so he has a lot of game design experience. But that's really going to allow students to focus on creating a more polished game that's going to be ready to be published by the end of the year. And it's a relatively intensive year master's program. So some master programs are like 2 years, but we kind of do it in 1 year. I think there are some classes over the summer, but I think it's a really good opportunity, and hopefully it will be a way to bring in people from around the United States eventually, and just mix our students with students out in the world. I think that's a really cool prospect of this master's program. Game art specifically, what we do is we focus on creating the digital 2D or 3D assets that are implemented into the game. So what we focus on is telling stories through visuals. If you have something as simple as like a prop that's just sitting on the table, what we try to do is teach our students like, hey, this prop has a story, and we have to be able to tell that story through how we model it, how we texture it, how we light our scenes can tell a story. So that's kind of the biggest aspect of game art. There is a technical side to it because it has to ultimately go in it has to be optimized for a real-time environment like a game engine. But most people are attracted to like being able to create their own props, environments, characters, and just world building, and see those beautiful visuals in the game. But we have to make sure it's technically correct and can be implemented. So that's kind of what the game art program is. And like I said, I'm really excited to be working on it. So I'm kind of what you would call a generalist because you can get really specialized within game art itself. You could be a 3D modeler, so that's just generating the geometry to create the shapes. You can be a texture artist. You're creating the materials and the textures that go on that 3D model. You could be a lighting artist. And even then it's like, okay, you're going to focus on creating props, you're going to focus on creating environments, and you're going to focus on creating characters. So those are just some ways we can break up the roles within game art. I consider myself a generalist. I dabble in a little bit of everything just because I have to be able to teach a broad spectrum of these to students. And hopefully, by taking our program, they kind of gravitate toward one of those elements and they really dive deeper into it. I personally enjoy really the modeling phase. Digital sculpting and creating characters is something that I find really rewarding, and it's, in my opinion, the most fun. So I think, and I'm just passionate about like all things related to it. Like there's this field, it's called rigging, and it's very technical. I'm not the best at it, but it's something I still try to practice and get better in, even though it's like I've never had a job where I had to be a rigging artist, for example. So rigging is basically, we have our 3D model. It's just a bunch of geometry shapes in the computer that make up like a person, for example. And so what we need to do is we need to create virtual bones for that character in order for the animator to be able to move them. So you have to set up the skeleton. It's like a simplified version of the human skeleton. You set that up, and then you have to link the geometry to that skeleton. And for example, like getting the shoulder to kind of deform properly when you move it is pretty challenging. So it takes a lot of work for the rigging artist to get things like joints, preserving volume when you bend your like bicep and it bulges up. That kind of stuff is very technical and tricky to get to look right. So really, when I got into teaching, I'd still do some freelance work, not so much right now because I've been super busy, but In my career, I've worked on. I'm from Michigan. I should have probably mentioned that. And because I'm from Michigan, a lot of the 3D job opportunities there were related to the automotive field. So I've done work for companies like GM, Ford, and all those guys. But I'd say a couple of my most notable projects are I actually got the chance to do architectural visualization for the Ford hub that's currently at the Westfield World Trade Center in New York City. So while they were building that space, I basically was given CAD information of that space, and I had to do things like create 3D assets to set dress it, and that would allow the higher ups to visualize like what's going in that space. And one thing is they wanted to change out theming and stuff, so we could try like, okay, what's going in the main window this time? Let's swap out those pieces of geometry and textures and whatnot. So I was responsible for doing stuff like that and lighting the scene. So that was a fun one. Also worked on early on in my career, real impact Honda crash simulation, and that was basically taking this really dense simulation data from Honda and trying to make it look presentable and actually be able to cycle through different layers of information in that crash simulation. My job, unfortunately, was pretty small on that because I was new at the time. So basically what I did is some basic light setup and environment modeling for like the background stuff for that. But it was a really cool experience to work on. And lastly, I'd say there was, I think it might still be up, but the New Balance shoe configurator in the Foot Locker in Times Square and on their website. I helped optimize the metadata so we could cycle through configurable parts, and I updated the lighting for the a few of the shoe models so they would be optimized a bit better. So that was pretty cool to work on, and it's always cool to see your work like actually come to fruition. Mm-hmm. Like for example, me and my wife, we went to New York a couple years ago, and I got to see the space that I kind of helped visualize, so that was awesome. Definitely. Ideally, like when I was going in school, I always thought like, oh, I'm going to work for ILM or Pixar or something like that and work in film. But once you see what's really out there, there's all these different niches you can kind of fall into, and you can bring a lot of these companies are like just starting to get in this stuff. So I've seen students like become almost the leaders on this new emerging technology that's being implemented in some of these companies who are just getting on the train, I'd say. So yeah, the possibilities are really vast. I've had students work for insurance firms doing 3D. I would say the world is like, as consumers, people want things customized to them, tailor-made for them, and they want it fast. And so that stuff dictates real-time environments, real-time visualization solutions, and that's what games are. They're environments created in real time. Well, not created in real time, but visualized in real time. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the work I did in the automotive was actually creating like dealerships that have you could put a VR headset on a person and they could click a button and swap out chairs, swap out materials for those chairs, and they're seeing it update in real time. We would do that for cars. We could configure different trim levels on the car, so swap out the material on the seats, different wood grain patterns on the dashboard, and stuff like that. I've had students, like I said, work in insurance firms, in the medical field, the military field, commercials, and product rendering. So, yeah, it's really vast at what students can kind of get into. I know. I think something's business could do is, it seems like it's getting harder and harder to find entry level positions. A lot of companies want experience right off the bat. And it's kind of like that whole conundrum, like you have to have good credit before you can get a credit card. But I'm, so
Yeah,
a lot of
exactly.
students do kind of voice that kind of feeling when it comes to looking for jobs.
Mhm.
Um, but if a company can maybe like try to work closely with like the schools, and try to get like internship partnerships so students can work and get that experience like during the summer or maybe in addition to their courses, I think students would really gravitate to those companies. um and I think providing a environment that allows students to, yes, a lot of them are still learning stuff, but a lot of them are skilled and talented and want to kind of flex their creative and technical skills. One job I had, like, I left because I didn't feel challenged. I was just doing like move this chair 2 feet to the left kind of work. And I was like, somebody else could do this. Like, I
Mhm.
want to like build this stuff. So challenging students on a technical and creative level, I think, is something that can be done. And also just providing modern workspaces. Again, this might be just my experience having come from the automotive industry, but it was still kind of like you have your cubicle, you have your cubicle.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not all my jobs, but there's some that were set up like that. And I just think having, yes, it's nice to have like your personal space, but if it's more open and you can talk to people, have areas where you can engage and provide feedback and receive feedback from your peers, that's kind of more welcoming. One job I went to, it was like my first job, it had a foosball table. So during lunch, we'd all like just kind of team bond over foosball and stuff, and it
Mhm.
would kind of keep us going throughout the day. So having those modern work environments, I think, is super beneficial for retaining people. Yeah, it's really anything. Like one company I have students working for, like they're literally going through Kroger's entire product and digitizing it. So they're getting scanned
Wow.
data in, they're creating models of that. And because Kroger's like, hey, we want all this stuff to be available online, and they actually want it like in higher detail in case, basically kind of trying to future proof it so they can use it for
Mhm.
other things that they can't even think of yet.
Yeah.
Um, so you'll see that a lot with a lot of companies. But yeah, like I said, military, medical field, architectural visualization is a big one. Automotive visualization is a big one. Um, Filming games, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from personal experience, and I'm still relatively new here, but I know when I came to Peoria, I came from kind of a bigger city, but I actually like it here. It's kind of got this big city vibe to it, especially downtown
Mhm.
area, but it's small. And I'm on my computer most of the time anyway. So I don't need like a lot of stuff to do, but I feel like there's enough to do in Peoria where it's fun.
Mhm.
But it's like quiet. Like for example, the city I lived at before had a lot of traffic. Like traffic when me and my wife
Mhm.
first came here, I was like, dude, this traffic, it's nice. It's
It's a
a lot.
completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was working in like the Detroit area, sometimes like a 45-minute drive would be an hour and a half drive just because like I've seen couches on fire on the freeway,
Oh, no.
accidents all the time, snowstorms delay you for 2 hours. So
Mhm.
this is like a huge, yeah. So I think that kind of big town but small town vibe is one thing. The
Mhm.
cost of living is a bit better here for me. So I do appreciate that. But I have a wife and two dogs, and they more so than me, I do like to do this, but they like to explore like the outdoors and stuff. And I think
Yeah.
there's a really nice trails and stuff around Peoria. So unfortunately, the timing I got here, like quarantine was pretty well underway.
Oh
So
no.
I haven't got to explore too much. Ethan took me to Time, and their Nashville style chicken is amazing. So I like eating that. But I did get to explore the riverfront, and they had the market up, and that was pretty exciting. So I'd say my perfect day, um, with the limited exposure I've had, is probably just exploring the riverfront. Um, Going to Emac and Bolio's ice cream shop right there
Oh,
by
nice.
the boat. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
that was really good. So just maybe taking my dogs out, walking the riverfront and exploring some more of the good restaurants that are down there. Thank you.